My name is Lee Kynvi. My pronouns are they, them, their. I serve as your student minister in residence until the middle of June. And I have an actual file called My Heart's Desires. And it's for exactly that. It's a place where I write down what I experience as the deepest desires of my heart. And I keep it updated. I add and I delete and I change things. At least once a week, I'm in there tinkering around. And I keep it way tidier than any other file I have, because it has to be like a meaningful size to be, it has to be a manageable size to be meaningful, exactly. So a lot of these heart's desires point to this decades-long quest that I've been on to open to all the emotions, to open to all the people in all the situations, to keep opening and to keep feeling. It's aspirational, of course, and naturally what I've learned primarily is how I close and when I close. Last spring, when Aaliyah was on sabbatical, and I needed to step into leadership, including stewardship, it was kind of finally time for me to face the one huge force that still reliably shut me down. Money. Money! So I'm a brand newbie, green, ministerish type person, and I somehow had to engage with this delicate task of bridging the practical and the sacred. And in this area that's deeply complicated and painful and difficult for me and for many people. So I had to work on my own relationship with money. Let's just say, as I was doing that, it wasn't quite moving fast enough, given that I could not ask you all to please wait approximately 7.5 years for me to finish this work and be ready to lead your stewardship in any way, shape, or form. There's a committee that has its own chair, but there is a role for the minister. Right? In every church I had been in the past, every time there was a money ask, my insides just squirmed. You know, people call it butterflies or whatever, but it was constant. We call it anxiety? Yeah. I had no idea how to figure out what to give. I got tangled up in knots. I had all these different voices arguing in my head with each other. Oh. And here I am with this desire to be open, and nothing about money felt open to me. It was like one slammed door after another. It brought all these feelings of deep fear, of insecurity. And what I noticed was that inevitably my focus would suddenly turn just to me. I was focused on me and my family and not on anybody else, which is kind of not how I am in the world. But I would be focused on what I might need, what I don't have, and never on what I have to give. So when people in general feel like they're constantly bombarded with donation requests from anywhere, they call it donor fatigue. I was like the definition of donor fatigue, but I had preemptive donor fatigue. It was there before anyone even asked. Since I didn't have a lot of time, because I hadn't actually decided to take this on, a year in advance or anything like that, I turned to an ancient spiritual practice around money, actually one that predates the English language itself by at least 700 years. I actually always think that deep spiritual practices that have been around for millennia are worth exploring. There seems likely to be a lot of wisdom there. So I turned to something called tithing, which is a practice of giving a set percentage, traditionally 10%, but whatever, of what you have to your community, traditionally through the church. And as I engaged with this idea, I found that tithing turned the whole process upside down. So instead of adding up expenses and figuring out what might be left and what I could donate from that perspective, tithing asked me to decide a percentage of my income that would go to the church and to put that at the top of my list of non-negotiable expenses. I didn't know what that process would bring. I had no idea. But I decided to commit to it for several years with the intention of slowly bringing my percentage up. I started at 7 and I'm going to 10. So I'm basing every year's pledge for me on the income tax return I had just finished. It actually got me to do mine on Friday night. And since I don't own property or actually anything significant, income is the thing that works for me. It might be different for other people if you want to explore this. One of the very first things I noticed was that all the anxiety, all the knots in my stomach around money, dissolved. They were gone. What I had was joy. I had a sense of wide open freedom. I made my commitment. And I was flabbergasted. It was incredible. I no longer had to worry about anybody's ask for my money. All my decisions were made. Everything I had to give was in my tithe. It removed the anxiety, it removed the guesswork, it removed the, is this enough? Do they need more? What if we can't? It removed all the comparisons with other people. I was able to be free because it was my freely and joyfully chosen generosity within my context and in my control. It felt transformative in a way that I'm still trying to learn how to describe. But what I can tell you from now is that it has opened me and freed me around money. It's opened my heart around money, and it didn't take 7.5 years. Bonus. So even though I can only serve you here for another 3 months until the middle of June, my son Lars is a member here, so he and I are here together pledging. If you don't know Lars, he's here in the wheelchair with Santiago. He's a delightful and sweet human being, 20 years old now. He loves people and music, right, buddy? And cold air and church. Cognitively, he's about 4 or 5 months, so he's not a guy who works with ideas. He experiences the world through his body. He's nonverbal, and his experiences of being here are profound in ways I never could have imagined before we came more than 3 years ago. And what's more, he's been able to communicate that to me in ways that I never could have imagined. I don't have time to explain that whole process to you, but I would love to sometime if you've got about 3 hours. Lars doesn't have any income to speak of, but last spring he got $400 for his birthday. I talked about this story last year, so some of you may remember it, but I've been asked to tell it again. On 5 different days, right, buddy, when you were in 5 different moods, I asked him about what he wanted to do with his money. Did he want more music therapy with Andrew, who is a very cool therapist who plays electric guitar? Did he want massage to help his back feel better, or did he want to give it to the church? And every single time, he clearly indicated, I want to give it to the church. So we donated all his birthday money to this special fundraiser we had last spring to try and meet the gap between our pledges and the actual need. My thought as his parent is there is just no better way for me to take care of Lars than to tithe here in this church full of people with whom he feels engaged and engaging, where he feels loved and where he can love, where he feels a sense of belonging and contributing, and where he has experiences and relationships that are meaningful to him. And he can develop an ever-deepening sense of himself as whole and beloved on this earth. Behind our generosity, yours, Lars's, mine, there are always stories. There are stories of anxiety. There are stories of our heart's desires. There are stories of legacy, of faith, of trust, of belonging. And those stories can change with time. That's our theology. They can change. They can become more whole. How might your stories be changing this year?